Switch 2 this year or next year? That's the topic, the title, the tea. We're all curious about Nintendo's next system. We think it's Switch 2, we want it to be Switch 2. A ton of rumors imply it's a Switch continuation with better specs and technology under it. But the general mass assumption most had going into 2024 was that this was the year we'd finally find out about that. This is the year they'd unveil it and they'd release towards the last third this holiday of 2024. Especially when looking at the software from Nintendo's first-party lineup scheduled for 2024, and all of them are Mario spin-offs, with most of them being either remasters and remakes, one of which recently being released alongside the general lifespan of consoles would normally last around their 6th or 7th year until the new one gets any official reveal. But the Nintendo Switch pretty much just entered its 8th year right now, today, March 3rd. Yesterday if you live in Japan, but today. And I will say, I was one of those people that largely did assume 2024 holiday was the year. It did feel likely at first. The lineup this year still isn't all that varied or strong. You'd see lineups slow down or not have as many larger scale games, the big first parties in particular, the usual lifespan of past consoles to keep in mind, alongside the myriad of rumors from dozens of different sources the past several months. Going into 2024, you pretty much had every reason to expect the next system relatively soon. Stars basically seemed to align. It did make sense. However, in my original video speculating the next system I made 7 months ago, I did mention 2025 as the safe zone. I was mainly leaning to holiday of 2024, but I did say 2025 is a viable possibility. And there have been other factors and reasons I didn't consider until recently, to where now, I'm pretty much certain the Switch might be coming next year. I'm not saying for sure, I'm just saying it's a possibility. It might be 2025. But why, SMT? You just said the last Direct felt like the endgame for the Switch. Why are you now pulling a 180? I certainly did, until I did sit on it more, and I'll get to my thoughts and reasons why. And I will say this, at least right now. I have been very wrong. A lot. Before. On a lot of things and predictions, Nintendo related and otherwise. I could be blowing up smoke over something that I am completely off the mark about, and I'm just being paranoid over. Switch 2 could be dropping this holiday regardless for all I know. But just to highlight the primary reason why a lot of people, including me, are considering 2025, it's what I mentioned earlier. A lot of rumors. And rumors of Switch 2 being slated for 2025. It's not those types of rumors where it's one person unverifiable or with a spotty track record saying it, or one person says it and then a less verifiable other person says it. It's literally several different people. VGC, Windows Central, Nikkei. I definitely trust Nikkei. Developers, people claiming they're working on Switch 2, plenty of which are solid and worth giving some credence. Granted, some of those same people were hard investing in the Switch Pro rumors back in 2021. Lo and behold, we never got Switch Pro. Still, it's a bunch of sources corroborating this stuff at the same time, all at once very recently. It is a lot of people in general just echoing Switch 2 push to 2025 at the exact same time, more or less, not this holiday. And that rumor mongering alone is enough for a lot of people because the sources are both verifiable and bountiful. And that does partially persuade why I think next year than this year. And even then, ignore all the rumors or assume everyone surrounding Switch 2 is completely false. It felt and still feels like Nintendo is winding down. Again, all the games so far for 2024 are Mario games. All Mario spin-offs, mostly remakes and remasters. Peach, Luigi's Mansion 2, and Thousand Year Door. And last year we still had remakes and remasters fill up the catalog. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, Metroid Prime Remastered, Pikmin 1 and 2, Super Mario RPG. And those types of games are smaller scale, take less time and manpower to make compared to newer games. Not to mention all of Nintendo's major, big-hitting AAA series all have their presences on Switch for a while now. Plus, Nintendo usually has a major direct in February to highlight what's going on for the first half of the year, sometimes with a major surprise for even later in that year. But we've gotten a February direct every year since 2019, and we did get a Nintendo Direct, but it wound up being a partner showcase, typically being solely third-party focused. There are clear factors that would insinuate this is the Switch's twilight year, but it is really hard to not look at other factors or rebuttals to some of those reasons you think we'd get a new system this year. As far as remakes and remasters go, you'd have to pretty much factor or add both this and last year to argue we got the most remakes and remasters compared to previous years when you list them off. 2020 2021 and 2020 saw more of those than last and so far this year. We're going to play a bit of a numbers game and a little semantics for now. 2021. You got Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury remastered with an extra campaign, Skyward Sword got remastered, Famicom Detective Club got remade, as well as Miitopia and Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. 2020, you do gotta factor COVID in that year's equation, but Pokemon Mystery Dungeon and Xenoblade Chronicles 1 got the remake treatment. And as far as remasters, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Part-Time UFO, Pikmin 3, and Mario 3D All-Stars. And if you factor how Mario 3D All-Stars is 3 remasters in 1, that number goes even higher. But I want to highlight 2018 specifically, which saw the greatest number out of every other year. Bayonetta 1 and 2, Tropical Freeze, Hyrule Warriors, Captain Toad, The World Ends With You, Pokemon Let's Go, Dragon Quest Builders, Go Vacation. Again, this is a whole semantics numbers game we're playing right now, but compared to 2023's Kirby, Metroid, Pikmin 1 and 2, Advance Wars and Mario RPG, it kind of pales in comparison to some previous years as far as remakes and remasters go. It is still something to consider when seeing how much first-party software is on the way, because still, most of the major releases from Nintendo last and this year are those remakes and remasters. It's similar to how the 3DS went out. It's just not that many compared to the first half of the Switch's life. And even then, just the fact we're sitting during a year where the only major releases thus far are Peach, Thousand Year Door, and Luigi's Mansion 2. Trust me, Thousand Year Door is all I need. I'm stupid happy that's on the way at all to keep me busy, but Mario spin-offs aren't enough to carry any year for Nintendo realistically all on their own. That's still a pretty barren year on the first-party side of it, and especially with Nintendo, most care about that first-party lineup. It's why a lot of people kind of just dismissed the Partner Showcase, because it's got nothing to do with Mario, Zelda, Pikmin, Metroid, and all that other stuff. Third-party support is fantastic, and it's amazing the Switch continues to get a lot even now, but that right there as well is kind of another reason why I'm starting to second guess, and a lot of us are easily dismissing like right away. There aren't a lot of first-party games on the way outside of the Mario stuff, but there is still a lot of third-party support and indie support coming to the Switch for pretty much the rest of the first half of this year, and then some. And I doubt even Nintendo would want to take away from that if they announced a new system in the middle of those games coming out. I feel we'd see a bigger slowdown on more fronts than just the first parties, and even then, at the bare minimum, I think Nintendo would want to make sure the attention and sales those games get are at their peak, as high as they can get, no matter what first or third party it is. As a business or salesperson, you'd want to do that. Like you look back at the Wii U, and the only games for people to keep an eye out for when they announced the Switch was Paper Mario Color Splash and Breath of the Wild. And once they revealed the Switch, they pretty much showed Breath of the Wild was going to be on the Switch, and Zeldas were cross-gen before. So a Paper Mario being effectively the direct sequel to the worst one was definitely not something for Nintendo or fans to invest in or care about then. Meanwhile, the 3DS, it got plenty of games and support in its life throughout pretty much the whole time since late 2011, and before Nintendo decided to fully invest into one system when the Switch came around, they still made games for the 3DS in case the Switch didn't work out. That's why the 3DS still had games 2 years into the Switch's life. But we long since knew that wasn't necessary, and the Switch was a worthwhile investment for both customers and Nintendo. I don't think they'd repeat exactly how the Wii U went out, with one Mario spin-off that a lot of people were not eager to get at all, and a Zelda that wound up being cross-gen anyways, especially when that was for a system no one bought. I think we get a more palpable slowdown or a more visible content drought everywhere than what we're seeing right now. And by the time they reveal that new system, they'd probably want a good 5 to 6 months of breathing room to market, to get people to know about it, sit with it, see what they got. That's exactly how the Switch went about. It got revealed October 2016, dropped 5 months later in March 2017. Teased a good chunk of games that initial reveal, and then teased and showed even more games 2 months before the Switch came out, for people to be on board, so that new system coming next year instead does make a lot more sense just from that perspective alone. But there's even more. Another big reason to why I'm feeling 2025, and it's pretty obvious. A new mainline Pokemon game. A new Legends game. Pokemon ZA. It's dropping in 2025. And I know, I was reminded Pokemon has dropped titles on previous hardware past the new hardware's released before. Black 2, White 2, it dropped on the DS months after the 3DS was released. Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, holiday of 2017, when the Switch was brand new. I have some reservations regarding that argument or fact when it comes to Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, when Pokemon since its inception was always handheld, every mainline Pokemon up until Sword and Shield was always handheld specifically, and Game Freak and the Pokemon Company would always make games, presentations, or concoct plans pretty separately from what Nintendo would do. I don't know if the Pokemon Company or Game Freak were sold on making the jump to Switch prior to Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon or not. There might be more nuance there. I don't know. That's a different story. You do got me as far as Black 2, White 2 though. But as far as the Switch goes, it's a much bigger phenomenon compared to the DS when you compare the gaming sphere now to 2025, even when the DS currently sold more. And it's the first system in forever Nintendo's decided to solo invest in and solo develop for. And this Pokemon game is not slated for early 2025, specifically like with Legends Arceus. It's just a vague, simple 2025. We don't know when specifically that game's dropping, and it is announced for Switch and Switch alone. There are rumors Switch 2 is backwards compatible between this and Furukawa expressing before wanting to make the transition seamless, highlighting Nintendo accounts, which is a Switch 1 thing, how save data is tied to that. I fully believe backwards compatibility to the next system is coming, or similar to Zelda Breath of the Wild or Twilight Princess. I don't think they're high, but there are odds of this Pokemon title becoming cross-gen. I don't think it's going to happen at all. When has a Pokemon ever became cross-gen? But it is possible. But even with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, or Black 2, White 2, especially with how much more coordinated TPC and Game Freak probably have to be with Nintendo now with the Switch compared to the past, I find it really hard to think they'd just drop a new Pokemon game on previous hardware after a new system for the third time again. Not with how much more popular and successful both the Switch and Pokemon is now, and not when Switch software isn't slowing down by a lot. Game Freak and the Pokemon Company would maybe do this a third time, but Nintendo themselves usually don't. If Nintendo's behind the wheel, which they pretty much are with the Switch, I don't see them wanting to do that. I could see Nintendo announce it around late this year or months before Legends ZA drops, and drops that system after that game, something along those lines. But that's another thing. Switch hardware is down. People are buying Switches less and less lately by a significant margin compared to 2020, 2021. But the software sales, still very much kicking. Mario Wonder dropped months ago. It's the fastest selling mainline Mario game ever, cracking 12 million copies in the first 3 months. That's so dumb. I'm happy. I'm really happy Wonder's a massive hit for how amazing it is, but dude, 12 million in 3 months for a mainline Mario game? Especially 2D, is unheard of. Pikmin 4, the fastest and best-selling Pikmin game, Mario RPG, the fastest-selling Mario RPG series game compared to every Mario & Luigi, and Paper Mario, Tears of the Kingdom's momentum is slowing down, but more than 20 million copies in less than a year is still extremely damn impressive for any game, any Nintendo first party. Breath of the Wild needed all of the Switch's entire lifespan to reach 31 million. Even with the slowed momentum, Tears of the Kingdom hitting 2/3 of that, not even in 1 year, is incredible. Games are still breaking massive records by considerable margins, whether total sales, the rate of their sales compared to previous entries, or both. Even if it's not insane, uber, omega, galaxy-sized peaks like some games were previously, like the Switch was during 2020, 2021, Animal Crossing, Breath of the Wild now, etc., there's still very good sales and numbers, period. It's just not Switch peak. There are plenty of us Nintendo fans clamoring for Switch 2 and new grand software, but in the grand scheme, not even close or halfway, Nintendo's not really in a rush to push out that new hardware anytime soon. Not when recent titles are still making records and selling beautifully, not when first and third party software is still on the way, and not when Nintendo would have plenty of other reasons beyond this to not release a new system anytime soon. Before I go further, can I say it's weird? Can I say it's weird to call this a delay? When plans can get delayed, plans and ideas do get set back, pushed back, but like, does this even count as a delay when they didn't even announce the thing yet? You know, can we really speculate or really say Switch 2 was delayed if it wasn't even announced yet? You know, because it's also, we really don't know what's going on behind the curtain. But one theory, claim, rumor, what have you, is Nintendo's trying to make sure their launch lineup for the first year, not even just the initial launch and launch month, is very good and high quality. And this would track pretty damn well. Nintendo 64, that got delayed by an entire year because Nintendo wanted to make sure Mario 64 was out the door and fully prepared. The Wii launched with Twilight Princess and Wii Sports late 2006, but 2007 it gained more momentum with those, Mario Galaxy, Metroid Prime 3, Mario Party 8, Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, and plenty more. The Switch itself, in its first year, was one of the best years for most Switch fans because it had a stacked-ass first year, opening with Breath of the Wild, getting Mario Kart after the first month, Splatoon 2, ARMS, Fire Emblem Warriors, 1-2 Switch, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Super Mario Odyssey during the holidays, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. There was a lot to play during that first year, and the momentum just kept rolling. On the opposite end, while there were other reasons it tanked beyond its library like a lack of a DVD player, you look at the GameCube and how it launched with Luigi's Mansion, Pikmin 1, Super Smash Bros. Melee, all of which weren't nearly as popular or crazier sellers as they are today. How much of an event Smash is now, or how monstrous Luigi's Mansion 3 sold, those GameCube titles didn't even come close. Or the Wii U in particular, how it was another new Super Mario Bros., Nintendo Land. And that was pretty much it, first party wise. It took a whole extra year for it to get a new 3D Mario the following holiday. A 3D Mario a lot of people initially weren't even itching for at the time, and it pretty much took 2 whole years for the Wii U to get Smash and Mario Kart. Point is, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Nintendo tried to prioritize making that initial launch heavy hitting. Having a massive 3D Zelda at the very beginning into a Mario Kart almost immediately after was an insane 1-2 combo that just propelled sales, Mario Kart especially. And then it was almost a new first party game almost every single month from there. The types of first parties to put out on the system and the rate they were coming out played a humongous part in drawing in the Switch crowd. And in most cases, you need a good first party lineup to get people on board. Everyone looking at Switch 2 is pretty much in agreement a new 3D Mario is coming for the launch of that system, and maybe Nintendo's trying to polish that up, similar with 64, and how that delayed the 64. Maybe they really want to make sure that mass 3D Mario is an incredible enough game for everyone to pick their pockets and purchase that next new system off the bat. It would be a little crazy, but they've done it before, and it does make a lot of sense anyways. Not to mention, 2025 is also Mario's 40th anniversary, which supports the 3D Mario release timing even more. But maybe Nintendo has a new Zelda lined up to accompany that launch, whether a top-down game or a remake. Maybe a new Mario Kart, a new Metroid, a new Donkey Kong, a new Kirby, Fire Emblem, Luigi's Mansion, another Splatoon, another Nintendo-themed Warriors game. Or maybe we somehow get a new F-Zero or Kid Icarus or whatever to fill out that initial launch year. Or we might be on the cusp of another brand new IP Nintendo is cooking. We simply do not know at this moment. But there's a lot of reason to suspect Nintendo wants to spread out more games, more reasons to pull people into this new system throughout that first year just as it comes to the market, and plenty of the list of games would suffice pretty well in doing so. Other reasons, between now and next year are 3 more Mario spin-offs and a major Pokemon game. I wouldn't be too shocked if Nintendo had at least one major title planned for this year anywhere for the Switch. I can only predict or speculate 2 potential titles, assuming one of them isn't coming to the next system or isn't going to be cross-gen, but there's always the possibility Nintendo does have at least one major first-party planned for later this year to be released on Switch. Last year, a lot of people speculated that 2023, final year for the Switch, last major big year for Switch, nothing after Zelda and Pikmin 4, but people were like, oh, this is going to be Nintendo's last major year for the Switch. But then Nintendo just waited until June to be like, here's a new 2D Mario, brand spanking new 2D Mario, that's ambitious, creative, and will definitely go on to sell mad well. Here's a remake of Super Mario RPG, built from the ground up. Both of these games coming in a matter of 4 to 5 months. Back in June 2021, they waited until that June to announce Metroid Dread and Mario Party Superstars for the holiday that year. Nintendo's held out on holiday titles before until the summer pretty often. We could get another new Mario Party, maybe Metroid Prime 2 remastered, or Samus Returns remastered, maybe another Kirby remaster or remake for Triple Deluxe or Planet Robobot or whatever, or Fire Emblem, maybe Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD make a comeback. More remasters and remakes is possible, but the 2 I have in mind is the possibility they say, no cross-gen, we're not waiting another year, it's been 5 since we restarted development, we're giving the Metroid Prime 4. I doubt it. I'm more confident it might be cross-gen, if not just Switch 2 altogether, but it is possible. The other possibility, somehow, Donkey Kong, hear me out. Donkey Kong Country's anniversary is this November, its 30th anniversary. Nintendo's making an active effort to remind people about Donkey Kong again. The Mario movie, Mario vs. Donkey Kong the remake, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe ending its DLC with Diddy Kong and Funky Kong being added to the game. Super Nintendo World in Japan is opening its Donkey Kong Country segment this year. There's a lot of building blocks being set up right now, and listen, I get DK's in a better boat than most other dormant, rotting franchises Nintendo's letting gather dust, but Donkey Kong fans, especially those of the country variety, have been treated like dog ass for the last decade. You gotta let them cope at least a little bit, aight? But it could happen. You never know. Never say never. Another reason, as petty as this sounds, Nintendo pushes back Switch 2 because of the rumors, because people are trying to leak info about Switch 2 constantly, and that also tracks surprisingly well. I don't know if you guys remember this like 3 to 4-ish years ago, but Netflix was gonna have a live-action Zelda series, and that got canned because people were leaking it online, reportedly. That does sound like a Nintendo thing Nintendo would do, and they of course wouldn't just cancel the next system, but to reevaluate its marketing, shift their plans and course of action so leakers don't give people the secrets does make some sense. Another reason, kind of to add to the copious amount of third parties and indie games coming in this odd roundabout way, are the Mario games coming up. Peach comes out next month, but Luigi's Mansion 2 HD and Thousand Year Door particularly are a little weird to me. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD especially. That was effectively announced a year in advance, and for a remaster of a 3DS game, that in of its own is very weird to me. I can't really see that release timing any other way beyond Nintendo trying to view Dark Moon HD the following summer as more life and legs for the Switch, more attractive software to keep the Switch afloat. Especially when Metroid Prime Remastered overhauled a bunch of assets and visuals, it looked pretty much current gen and priced at $40 comparatively, and it shadow dropped that same direct pretty much. But 2 getting remastered is bizarre for a lot of reasons beyond how well Dark Moon did originally. Same for Thousand Year Door. That one we don't even have a window for beyond the year itself. That's more remake territory to fill out the year, and it's of a game Paper Mario fans adore. That one makes a lot more sense. It's just the release timing again. It's left ambiguous and feels more odd when they're smaller, less time-consuming, easier types of games to make. Another reason, the smallest reason I could think of, Nintendo probably wants the Switch to surpass the DS and PS2 in sales. They'd probably need another title during that holiday to give it one last final push. I don't think Thousand Year Door would be enough to do that, as much as that pains my soul to say. But 15 million copies away isn't that far away for the Switch to crack. Even with sales of the system diminishing, it very well could at least get close with one more major release before Switch 1 goes out of print. Maybe they could give the Switch a price drop, and that would also be a good indicator of how far out Switch 2 is, if we don't get a Dr. Mario game on the Switch by then. But another reason why is that March of the following year for Switch still worked out very well for them. It wasn't the holiday, but the Switch pretty much had no competition that spring, being the only major system or thing dropping at that time. You lessen the risk of supply shortages and scalping that the holidays deal with all the time, and it's just the only thing on people's minds then. It's also because of some fiscal year analyst type thing I know nothing about, but that's partly why Switch dropped in March for fiscal year BS, not even necessarily just to copy one-to-one how they released Switch 1. They might find it more palatable for the public to keep an eye out for, market towards, and buy Switch 2s, especially when it does help broaden that launch lineup, as we did see with Switch 1. But even when you calculate all of this, despite we're still getting more remakes and remasters this year, software sales still doing remarkably well, third-party support still at a considerable high this year, they might be gunning for #1 best-selling console of all time, they might just like dropping their consoles in March now, they announced a major Pokemon title for next year, and could drop at any point next year. They might want that initial first year to be amazing and stacked like 2017 was. They might have Switch 1 titles they want to drop that they're holding out on. Several of these highlighting abundantly Nintendo's in no rush to put out their next system. But I think my last and biggest point to why I think Switch 2 is still a ways from now, coming sometime next year, is that we've heard nothing about it from Nintendo themselves. You go back to 2016, around April is when they themselves officially announced Nintendo NX. More details coming in 2016. And that was during the one console that tanked so damn hard, it really did not matter when they announced the Switch to keep Wii U sales high, because the Wii U's hardware and software sales were anything but high. We pretty much knew a year in advance from Nintendo about their next system, and that it was coming very soon. Not even 5 months from the first trailer, we knew about Switch from Nintendo for pretty much an entire year. It's just the first half of that was a simple tease, and the second half was the actual reveal. Right now, it's all rumors, speculation, and hearsay. No codename or anything concrete along those lines, like specs or any other stuff. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. Yeah, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's sales are finally slowing down after 7 years, Tears of the Kingdom and other games are losing momentum, but them and more Nintendo games are still selling, and selling insanely well regardless. In business, you never want to draw attention away from a viable product, even when it's run its course. That's exactly what happened with the 3DS in case the Switch flopped. The 3DS was there for a while longer. And if they want Peach, Luigi's Mansion 2, Thousand Year Door, and Pokemon Legends ZA to do well, that makes it a lot harder for them to do if they announce a brand new console when a lot of people are anticipating Switch 2, regardless of backwards compatibility. That type of thing matters now because the Switch is and has been such a major phenomenon for almost a decade now. Way more than the Wii U and even way more than the Wii. It's a very different system and a very different Nintendo than what they both were over a decade ago. Especially with the Switch, where it was their first console in multiple generations, where they fused a lot of their divisions from their handheld and console systems into one. They pretty much put all of their teams, their resources and assets and whatnot, all into one sole console for a generation. Something they never did before, and we're still getting a lot more games from them than we did before because of that. They would probably not want to take that away from their developers and resources and just say next month, hey guys, we have Switch 2 coming this holiday, you know? I don't see Nintendo just risking cannibalizing sales entirely for Mario Wonder, Mario RPG, Pikmin 4, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe after it's the magnum opus of Mario Kart now, Mario vs. Donkey Kong. A lot of these we pretty much just got, and many other games prior still selling well, on top of Princess Peach Showtime, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, Pokemon Legends ZA, and Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, when those come out. They have a lot more justification as a business to not do so. And even then, all of this, and a little more to say. I'm getting pretty substantial deja vu with all the Switch 2 speculation. Just barely over a year ago, there were a lot of people saying 2023 was the Switch's last major year. Not even halfway into 2023, with Pikmin 4 and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom not even out yet, there were a ton of people speculating we were entering the twilight years, the swan song of the system. And even then I'm just like, what the hell are these people talking about? And all of that was before we got a brand new 2D Mario, the most ambitious and one of the best selling 2D Marios in the series, before the biggest Zelda being a follow-up to the previous biggest Zelda, Pikmin 4, Mario RPG, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe wrapping up its DLC, capping it off with 96 tracks and 48 characters to choose from at the end of that year, WarioWare Move It, Detective Pikachu Returns, still more major and definitely massive titles and updates, and in Mario Wonder's case being a 2D Mario game, games that will sell mad copies over a long stretch of time. Unless we see a much more palpable slowdown from both third and first parties, I can't imagine Nintendo would announce a new upcoming system this March, this spring in general, or anytime soon, because most of the time they usually wouldn't announce a new system to undercut or risk shifting focus and attention away from the recent titles, hindering their sales and marketability, regardless of their next system being backwards compatible or not. Even for the smaller titles like Peach Showtime, Luigi's Mansion 2, and Thousand Year Door. And Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is slated for the summer, but we don't know when that's dropping specifically, and we don't even have a date for Thousand Year Door. Not only that, not only was this Switch 2 speculation decently rampant a full year ago, this happened way back in 2016, where everyone was convinced Nintendo NX was dropping that holiday, and nobody even considered, I don't even think they were able to conceive, the possibility where it was either originally planned or postponed to 2017. And even there, assume it was, no one figured delayed to 2017. And we got it that year's March anyways. And now it's pretty much happening all over again. People initially see all the Mario games they're dropping, more spin-offs, all the third-party and indie stuff, plenty of remakes and remasters, and are kind of assuming, even panicking for a new system, for seeing what they announce and how they act on a surface level. It happened last year, it happened during the NX days, it's happening again here. It's history repeating itself. It's Nintendo being a little weird, a little conservative with their aim, but especially just Nintendo fans kind of circling around rumors, personal desires, and conniptions about the next system when we usually never fully know about it until Nintendo themselves drop either that initial trailer or a tease for such. Personally speaking, if you told me right now with full concrete proof that the Switch 2 was delayed to 2025, I'd be sitting in my room playing an early copy of the Thousand Year Door remake. I'd respond, you do you. I'm a pretty easy guy to please. I'm a Mario guy. You slap a Mario game or two on my lap, especially if it's really good, I'm pretty content for a good 3 to 4 months. If it's a 3D game, a great 2D game, a Mario Kart, a good Paper Mario, Mario & Luigi, or a Luigi's Mansion game, maybe 6 months. Yeah, 4 Mario spin-offs aren't enough to supplement an entire Nintendo console's year, but it does got Thousand Year Door in there. You gotta give it props for that. And if Switch 2 does get pushed back to next year, and Thousand Year Door drops before Switch 2 gets announced, even better in my book. The more Nintendo markets the remake, the better the odds are Thousand Year Door is on millions of people's laps, the better the odds it sells very well for a Paper Mario game. An extra way to insinuate to Nintendo and Intelligent Systems, hey, T2ID's format of gameplay and story might be the best way to go. I'm all here for it. Heck, there's somehow strangely odds Thousand Year Door gets pushed way back to the holiday, and that's our holiday title. You never know. I have no idea. Doubt, I don't know. But even then, I'm just like, Tyler, bitch, you gotta do the big plans and the videos you want. You gotta take the leap. You gotta work in silence. Focus on yourself. Just whip out some banger YouTube content. Grind and Smash. Grind and Tekken. Keep up your running. Personal bullshit. I got stuff to do. I got myself to work on. A life outside gaming and YouTube to tend to. Lord knows I have a stupidly massive, humongous backlog of gaming to attend to too. So Switch 2 could drop late 2025 or 2026 for all I care at the moment, unless it looks off on Nintendo's recent catalog to me in more ways. I'm a little hesitant. I never fully put all my eggs in the Switch 2 for 2024 basket, and it still very much can happen, but upon further reflection, way more than ever, I'm not really expecting Switch 2 until early or even mid to late 2025. If Nintendo has any inclination to tell us at all, we would know pretty easily. They're not in any rush to do so. They don't have any reason to rush. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, how wrong or far off the mark I am. Or maybe you think I'm right. Maybe you also think, yeah, Switch 2 does seem a little farther away than we or others initially thought, and other related ideas. Let me know down below. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful March. Springtime, baby. Let's go. Stay super.
Yeah.